Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told out of Voice of Radio. So today, we need to be taking a look at mysterious treasures. Yeah, that's right. We are continuing our look at the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game, and we have made it to the second Diamond and Pearl set, Mysterious Treasures. We did have a look at the base set for Diamond and Pearl last week. I'll put a link to that and all the other videos in the description, so you can join in, and even if you weren't with us since the beginning, you can catch up and see the complete history of the Pokemon trading card game, at least up until this expansion. Now, this was released in Japanese on March the 2nd, 2007, and it was released in English on the 22nd of August, 2007. And it is very much worth pointing out that in Japan, the name was Secret of the Lakes, because it is the set that introduced the Lake Trio, Uxie, Mesprit, and Azalf into the trading card game, although they would reappear in a couple of sets' time, and they would be, a lot better, shall we say. Now, I do need to, not a correction, it's not really a correction, but last week I told you that the rule on fossils was changed, so that it used to be they didn't give up a prize when KO'd. Now they totally do. Well, that actually really came in Mysterious Treasures, because this was, of course, the set that introduced the new Fossil Pokémon. There were 2 new Fossil Pokémon in Generation 4, so we got them all in here. We got Rampardos, and we got ourselves Bastiodon. They were, of course, the new Fossil Pokémon that came around in Gen 4, so they were the ones that made it out over here. So that was kind of cool. Now, it is also very much worth bearing in mind that there was an Alakazam in this set. And that's very, very interesting. I'm sure we've done a video about this. But the reason it's important that there is an Alakazam in this set is because there's no Kadabra. Because of the whole Yuri Geller thing, there was no Kadabra, although interestingly enough, the Alakazam does still say that it evolves from Kadabra. So what we had an Abra, which basically had to cheat. So the Abra had an attack for 2 energy that said search your deck for an Alakazam and put it onto Abra. This counts as evolving Abra, and then you shuffle your deck. Now, of course, you can do what you've been doing for years at this stage, and you can just use a rare candy to go all the way up from Abra to Alakazam, and that's kind of cool. But there was no Kadabra here. That is fairly important to point out. It was a fun little historical side note, shall we say. Speaking of fun little historical side notes, held items were introduced in this expansion. Why they came in Diamond and Pearl 2 here, rather than in Diamond and Pearl base, I'm not entirely sure. But there were 3 Pokemon that had berries. Now, we hadn't actually had held items before, and we haven't had them for a long time, but they were this weird little extra thing. They're not Pokepals or Pokebodies, so anything that turned them off wouldn't interact in the same way. They are just these extra things which are like Pokepals and Pokebodies, except they're not, so the rules applying to them don't apply here. So there was a Bidoof with a Wackenberry. Any damage done to it by attacks from lightning Pokemon is reduced by 20. Weirdly specific. We saw a Buizel with a Chesto Berry. If it's asleep, you remove it at the end of each player's turn. Way more useful. Cannot have sleep sticking to it. And there was a Shinx with a Rostberry. If it is burned, you remove the special condition at the end of each player's turn. Again, significantly more useful than the random less damage against lightning Pokemon, which might not even be that relevant, because lightning Pokemon were not exactly every deck back then. And we would get more of these over the coming sets. In this set it was only berries, but in the future it would go beyond just only berries. Now, there was actually a secret rare in the set, the first time we'd had a secret rare for a little while, and it was Time-Space Distortion. It was, according to the lovely folks over at Bulbapedia, a great website for research, the first secret rare we'd actually had since Holon Phantoms. And if anyone's wondering about that one, that was where we got the secret rare Mew. So there we go. Although it is worth pointing out that back in Holon Phantoms it was a box topper, as a lot of the secret rares back then tended to be. This was not. You had to actually just pull it from the set. And it was kind of a cool card, we'll get there in a moment. But it was a really nice card because it actually had a holofoil border, making it the first English trainer card to actually have a holofoil border, which is very cool. And of course it is based around the Lake Trio, but then again I've told you they were very much the poster children for this set, so kinda makes a perfect amount of sense. Now, in terms of promos here, there was a pre-release promo, it was Gabite. And in terms of the most expensive card, it was Time-Space Distortion. But I can go on to trollandtoad.com right now and buy a near mint copy for $22. So we're still in that stage at the moment where it's not a particularly valuable set. Sealed product, still moderately valuable. But if you open up the packs, the chances of actually making your money back is, extremely slim, shall we say. It's not a money set. The Diamond and Pearl sets didn't tend to be. They were the older sets. Now, in terms of the special cards, the chase cards, so to speak, we were on level X's at the time, and we got ourselves free in this particular set. Now we had the pair of Electivire and Magmortar. They were the new evolutions which came around from from basic Pokemon as they were in Generation 1, that then got babies, and then in Gen 4, they ended up getting Stage 1s, which was kind of cool, and then they ended up getting their level X's in this particular set. So that was quite nice. The third one we got here was Lucario level X. Lucario, very much one of the more popular Pokemon from Gen 4, so it does make sense that we would get ourselves a level X rather quickly. Now, one other cool little weird thing about the set was they started playing around with the weakness a little bit more. So I did show you in the previous set that they changed weakness from ×2, and they changed it to plus 10, 20, or 30, but I showed you that even things like Empoleon level X was just a plus 30 weakness. Well, in this set, we actually saw a couple of plus 40 weaknesses. We did see that both Aggron and Bastiodon, the big metal stage 2 Pokemon, they did come in with a plus 40 weakness, and we did actually see ×2 weakness making a return here, though it was just in terms of the level X's. So all three of the level X's I've shown you, your Electivire, your Magmortar, your Lucario, all three of those did come in with a ×2 weakness. Again, it's a weird thing that they could have changed in Diamond and Pearl, and they ended up making it different between Diamond and Pearl in this set, but they did get towards a more, it could be plus 10, 20, 30, 40, or for level X's, we're going to just go full on ×2. Now, in terms of theme decks, we're not talking the beginning of a generation here, so we're back to having two theme decks, Armor Fortress and Skull Charge. And yes, they were based around the fossil Pokemon. So, Armor Fortress was your Bastiodon theme deck. It was water metal type in terms of the focus of the theme deck. And you got yourself a holo Bastiodon and non-holo rares of Walrein and Mantine. Interesting to note that the holo Bastiodon was exclusive to the theme deck. It was a non-holo in the set normally. There was also a shield and coin here, and I love when the theme decks had appropriate coins. I didn't all do them, but when they did, it made me happy. Moving over into Skull Charge, we had your Rampardos themed theme deck, and you got yourself a holo rare Rampardos. Again, that's exclusive. It was a non-holo only in the set. And you got yourself non-holo rares of Kricketune and Ariados. And you did get yourself a really cool Granados coin there as well. Again, just love those coins. They're very, very cool. Now, in terms of the best cards in the set, this was not a particularly great set. It was not a particularly playable set. It brought us a few very good cards, but in terms of the set as a whole, it was not a real powerhouse set. And in terms of Pokemon, I mean, there was a Blissey, and there was a Blissey that got printed as a Worlds deck because it made the final in Seniors at the World Championships, so I suppose that's probably the best card in terms of making its own deck. Now, the Blissey here had the Poké Power Kind Egg, and it said that once during your turn, if Happiny is anywhere under Blissey, you may choose a number of cards in your hand up to the amount of energy attached to Blissey, and put those cards on top of your deck. Then you draw that many cards. So essentially what you got to do was put cards from your hand back into your deck and replace them with random cards from your deck. But it meant extra consistency, and you weren't gaining more cards, but you were certainly finding yourself more likely to draw the particular cards you wanted, and that was cool. As to the attack, 1 colourless energy minimum, 20 damage, plus 10 for each energy attached to Blissey, but before you did damage, you could search your discard pile for a basic energy and attach it to Blissey. So you would do more damage for each energy on there, but you would also be able to build it up more and more using the attack itself. And this really was a Pokemon that was so good, it made a deck in and of itself, and made it all the way to the finals in Seniors, which was kind of cool. Now, I did mention about the Lake Trio earlier, and press F for Uxie, would ya? Now, when we get to a later set, Uxie is going to become one of the very, 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 very best cards, not just in the set, but that we have ever seen in the history of the game. This Uxie was not particularly good. Once during your opponent's turn, if Uxie is damaged by an attack, you essentially turn that attack off next turn. If you've got Mesprit and Azalf in play, for 1 energy you did 30 damage plus sleep. This was not a particularly good card, and it did not see a particularly large amount of play. But Mesprit and Azalf actually did. Now, Mesprit was kind of cool. It had a Pokebody that said if you've got Uxie and Azalf in play, then the retreat cost for each Uxie, Mesprit and Azalf, yours and your opponent's, is reduced to 0, i.e. they all get to retreat for free. And for 2 energy, 30 damage, you got to switch it with one of your bench. Mesprit wasn't really all that good in a lot of stuff, but it did see a bit of play here and there. It had a decent hit and run attack, but certainly when we got to the Azalf Mesprit Uxie deck in a few sets time, having this to give all of your Pokemon free retreat was awesome. It was a really, really nice tech, but it was mostly in the AMU, Azalf Mesprit Uxie, deck that we would get in a few sets time when the second lot of these came out, as opposed to the Uxie I just showed you that didn't even see play in that. But the Azalf from this set was the one that was the absolute star. Azalf had the Pokebody down a material. If you've got Uxie and Mesprit in play, it increased the attack cost of each of your opponent's basic Pokemon attacks by 1 colourless energy, though it didn't stack. So again, in an AMU deck where you are playing Mesprit and Uxie, this was a really cool Pokebody because it increased the cost of your opponent's basic Pokemon attacks. That was awesome. But this Azalf was actually very, very interesting because it was played away from the others. Because it had the attack Bind Pulse. 1 psychic energy, 10 damage. During your opponent's next turn, your opponent cannot attach any special energy cards from his or her hand to any of his or her Pokemon. How cool was that? Of course, back then we had a lot of special energy that was really good, like Scramble Energy that we keep talking about. So, against a deck that only played special energy, if you attacked with this early enough, you would literally shut down all of their energy and you just win the game. That was it. You would just win the game right there and then. It was awesome. And this did see a bunch of play in a bunch of other decks. It made its way into Palkia decks. It made its way into Regigigas decks. So unlike the Mesprit, which only saw play in AMU decks, and the Uxie that didn't even really see play in them, this actually made its way into other decks. Now, the Garchomp from this set was particularly cool. This did actually see a fair amount of success. Sami Sakum, the UK player who, well, he top cut worlds every year at one point, certainly one of the best players to ever play the game, did take this to a 2nd place finish at the UK National Championships. Now, to be fair, this Garchomp would need the level X that wouldn't come around quite yet, but it was a very cool card in its own right. The Pokebody Rainbow Scale said that if an active Pokemon had weakness to any of the types of energy attached to Garchomp, you did 40 more to that Pokemon. So, but only if you had basic energy. As soon as you put any special energy on, it stopped working. So, if there was a water weak Pokemon and you had a water energy on, you'd do an extra 40 damage. Now, Dragon Fang for free energy did 70, but you could just play the type of basic energy you needed to hit the Pokemon in the metagame at the moment, and you would essentially be doing 110 damage. Bearing in mind, Garchomp is a big bad stage 2 of 130 HP, that should probably tell you what you need to know about 110 being a lot of damage. I love Garchomp as a Pokemon, and at the time, I mean, this was, the first Garchomp we literally ever saw. It was the debut. But it was also, by the time the Level X came around, the best Garchomp we had, and that makes me rather gosh darned happy indeed. Now, the other one that was kind of cool and saw a little bit of play as its own deck was Honchkrow. Now, this had the Pokeball Dark Genes. As long as it had the energy necessary to use its attack, each of your Murkrow can use Honchkrow's attack as its own, without the necessary energy to use that attack. I.e., if Honchkrow has enough energy to use Dark Wing Flaps, all of your Murkrow can use them without having to pay, which is a bit silly, because then you basically got a basic Pokemon attacking for free. What did Dark Wing Flaps do? 50 damage, choose one card from your opponent's hand without looking, then look at it and have your opponent shuffle it into his or her deck. It was very, very cool as a little rogue deck running around, having all of your Murkrow attacking with Honchkrow's attack. Although again, this is one that would really, really benefit from having Honchkrow level X later on. And just to finish off with a Pokemon, I know this isn't one of the best Pokemon that was released in the set, although again, the competition was not really that high, so maybe it actually was. But I do want to give a shout out to Gyarados here, because this was about the time when I started getting big into playing, entering tournaments, etc. And the very, very first deck I ever made was a Gyarados deck. You see, it had the Pokemon Dragon DNA, which let it use the attacks of its basic Pokemon, and there was a Magikarp in the set that had Flail, and that would allow it for just a single energy, which is a bit silly, to do 10 damage for each damage counter on Magikarp. But of course, you wouldn't actually use Magikarp here, you would use Gyarados, and then Gyarados could have 11 damage counters and be doing 110 damage for a single energy. 4 energy, 80 damage, flip till you get Tails for each head, choose a card from your opponent's hand without looking and discard it. If the first coin is Tails, Gyarados is confused. Not exactly the best attack ever, though I'd use it here and there if I really got time to build it up. But I have to mention this because I love it and it's got a special place in my heart. Now, in terms of trainer cards, there was actually one in this set that was proper job full on, over the top, brilliantly, brokenly great. It was BB Search, and this would be used, I mean, it would be reprinted a lot, but this would be used for the entire Diamond and Pearl era. It let you swap a card in your hand for a Pokemon in your deck. It was awesome. Now, it's worth pointing out that later on we'd get cards like Claydol and Uxie that would let you draw until you had a certain number of cards in your hand. So having one fewer card in your hand was awesome. But because we had the draw engines of Claydol and Uxie, you could afford to use your supporter just for searching a Pokemon and it wouldn't hurt you like it would in other formats. But also, being able to put a card back in your deck was awesome, because it meant you drew one extra card with Claydol or Uxie. Make no mistake about it, this was, for years, one of the very, very best supporters around. Now, as well as being cool, Time Space Distortion was actually a really good card as well. It let you flip 3 coins, and for each heads, you searched your discard pile for a Pokemon, and put it into your hand. You'd hit 3 occasionally, you'd hit 0 occasionally, you'd generally hit 1 or 2, but it was just really good for getting Pokemon from your discard pile straight into your hand, ready to use straight away. It was very cool. Now, Quick Ball came around in this set, though it is very much worth pointing out it is not like the Quick Ball nowadays. When I say nowadays, I'm referring to 2020 when I record this. Hopefully people are watching this in 2030, when the Quick Ball nowadays is actually very much a retro card. Although, fun little fact, because it received an official errata, this Quick Ball from Mysterious Treasures is legal for tournament play. And what you do is when you play it, you reveal cards from your deck until you reveal a Pokemon, and then you put that Pokemon into your hand. So it basically just gives you the first Pokemon in your deck. It's kind of random, but it did see a bunch of play as Pokemon Search. Now, Team Galactic's Wager sounds like a weird card, and it was. Each player shuffled his or her hand into his or her deck, and you played rock, paper, scissors. The winner drew 6 cards, the loser drew 3. It's a rock, paper, scissors supporter that was actually good, and it was good. This got played in Jason Glasinski's Psychic Lock deck, with which he won the World Championships. It got played in a lot of very high-level decks. A lot of people will tell you that rock, paper, scissors is a game of skill rather than a game of luck. And it is interesting to note that in Japanese tournaments, they tend to use rock, paper, scissors to decide who goes first, rather than the coin flip we use in North America, Europe, etc. It's weird to have a supporter card that relied on rock, paper, scissors, but the fact of the matter is this saw a huge amount of play in a lot of extremely high-level decks. And this set did also give us the debut of an item card that would be reprinted again, Night Maintenance. Let you search your discard pile for up to 3 in any combination of Pokemon and basic energy cards, and shuffle them into your deck. It was a really nice recovery that would end up making its way into a whole bunch of decks, and would actually be very popular again when it was reprinted later on, with a different name. And then Lake Boundary, which thematically was cool because it's another card which is based around the Lake Trio. But like I said, this set is the Lake Trio / Fossil set. Fun little side note, there was also Fossil Excavator in this set, if you're into that. And Dusk Ball, which is kind of thematically for fossils in a weird kind of way. Anyway, Lake Boundary was a stadium card that made all weakness ×2. Remember, until the Diamond and Pearl base set, weakness had been ×2. It changed when we got to Diamond and Pearl, and then they gave us a stadium to make it ×2 if you wish. And this was really simple. This was used if you wanted to get a KO on a Pokemon, but their +30 weakness wasn't good enough. Well, great news, ladies and gentlemen. Now it was. Now we went back to ×2 weakness, and this helped an awful lot. Well, helped you an awful lot. Your opponent, maybe quite a bit less. Now, in terms of the best decks, there really wasn't much in terms of decks that was made from this set. The main one, of course, was Blissey. Blissey was a deck that really did come around in this set, and it was played by Paul Atanasov, who was a senior division finalist at the 2008 World Championships. And in terms of Pokemon, it just played Blissey, and then some Shoutout to get yourself rolling in the early game. But because of that, it made lots of space for things like Cessation Crystal, which would come around and turn off Poke Powers and Poke Bodies, which you didn't rely on, but your opponent maybe would. You had room for energy removal too, to get rid of your opponent's energy, which was kind of fun. You could play Crystal Beach, which said that any energy card providing 2 or more energy now just provides 1 colorless energy. So in your face, everyone relying on stuff like Scramble Energy. And it did even play that Hold-On Energy Fighting and Fire, whereby if you had any basic fire energy attached, you had no weakness. And because Blissey used colorless energy and it really did not matter what type of energy you used, Blissey played fire energy. This was a very, very cool deck. It also played plus power to try and do a little bit of extra damage. It was disruptive, it was fun, it did what it needed to do, quite frankly, and this was a deck that I'm very, very fond of. And then in terms of other decks, I did mention that Garchomp deck earlier. Shout out to the wonderful PTCGRadio.com. It's a good place to go and look up old deck lists, quite frankly. And this Garchomp was pretty much a deck in and of itself. There were a bunch of decks played around it, but it was very much a Garchomp deck. It did use Garchomp Level X that wouldn't be coming around for a couple of sets yet. That had the Pokepower Dragon Pulse, that when you put Garchomp from your hand onto your active Garchomp, you flipped 3 coins, and for each heads you put 1 damage counter on each of your opponent's bench, which was very, very cool. And for 0 energy, you got to search your discard pile for a non-level X Pokemon and put it onto your bench as a basic Pokemon, then attach up to 3 basic energy cards to that Pokemon. So essentially, you could get a fully charged Garchomp straight onto your bench by using Garchomp level X for 0 energy, which was very, very cool. This did play that Dusknoir we mentioned last week that was really nice for hurting your opponent's bench, just basically making them get rid of one of their bench Pokemon, which was kind of funny. And there are a bunch of other little techs in and around, but make no mistake about it, this was a Garchomp deck. And finally, we could mention Honchkrow as its own deck. It's hard to really say how much of a Honchkrow deck this really was. It was a Honchkrow deck, don't get me wrong, but it used the Honchkrow level X, it used the Palkia from Diamond and Pearl, and the Palkia level X that would come along in Great Encounters, and frankly, as cool as this was, and it was cool, it's hard to really say it was a deck that just came around because of Honchkrow. Now, it is worth bearing in mind that level X's retain the attacks and abilities of their previous level, which means that Honchkrow's Pokebody saying that each of your Murkrow can use Honchkrow's attack without paying the necessary energy meant they could also copy Honchkrow level X's attacks, 40 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon, or 60, and if you would get a KO, you may search your discard pile for any card and put it into your hand. And you would use it with some hand disruption cards like the Absol, which we didn't have yet, but we'll have in Secret Wonders. Or Team Galactic's Mars, which again we would get in Secret Wonders, which would work to disrupt your opponent's hand. And of course then you've got Palkia level X with Restructure, that basically let you and your opponent both switch your opponent's active with one of your opponent's bench. They get to do it for you, you'd get to do it for them, but you've got a whole bunch of low retreat, free retreat Pokemon, so it was a bit less of an issue. Plus you were prepared for it and they weren't. It was a fun deck, and to be fair, Tommy Sioblom, did make top 32 at Worlds with it, but it was not a particularly powerhouse deck, and honestly, in a set that had produced more top-level decks, this might not have even made it into the video. So there we go, ladies and gentlemen. Mysterious Treasures. A very cool set focused around the Fossil Pokémon and the Lake Trio, with a couple of really good cards and one of the best supporters we would have in years, but not a set that really set the metagame on fire. But now it's over to you, lovely ladies and gentlemen. What do you remember about this set if you were playing? What do you think about this set if you don't? Go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, and please do like it. Spam that like button. Let's make these videos popular. Yay! And then subscribe to this channel. Follow me on Twitter at TheWassy. You know all of this, ladies and gentlemen. The most important thing is always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.